Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained here on this great creation that we call YouTube. I am your host, Jimm Kelgard. That's right, Jim with two M's, one, two. Why? Well, because my mama dropped me on my head at least twice that I'm aware of, so it makes sense in that regard. But that's beside the point. Joining me tonight, we have an awesome all-star cast assembled here, a rock star cast, as some might say. And we're going to introduce them here momentarily. And to get the party started, I'm going to say hello to my favorite Denver Broncos fan, the greatest bass player to ever grace the stage at Phenomicon, Mr. John Nyberger. John, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty well. Glad to be here. I'm not sure about that bass player bit thing. One of our other guests might be a better bass player. We just don't know it.
Well, we're going to get to him in just a moment. But we also have to give a big shout out to our other co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. John Stratton. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. Just, getting over the holiday season,
Yes,
all that work. And yeah, I didn't even realize Christmas had passed.
Right on. And of course, we have to welcome back to the Soul of the Unexplained, the Dino Beaver himself, Mr. Caleb Hanks. How are you doing, buddy? Good to see you back here.
Brother, I am doing fantastic. All of my collective brothers, I'm exhausted as hell from the holidays. I'm not going to lie, but that is never going to stop me from, jumping on the mic and talking with you guys, because how could I say no? I love you dudes, and I could not be more excited to be back on the Soul of the Unexplained after our other all-star cast of the entire Hitchhiker gang on there last time was the last time I was on, and Jesus, that was insane. But tonight, I'm really, really excited because we're introducing to a larger, to the Phenomicon and or Hitchhiker-centric part of the world, another fantastic character. So, Jim, you want to do it? I can do it either way.
Well, Caleb, you do such a great job of introducing your podcasting partner on your podcast. I'm gonna let you introduce the Dr. Captain.
Indeed, the elusive, the one and only. If you happen to have, stumbled upon the podcast that I am part of called Ghosts in the Mountains, which the lovely people here at the Soul of the Unexplained have been very, very generous in trying to boost us and get our name out there. If you have heard us, then you've probably heard the guy that actually has a plan, and you can tell on there I do not. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for the first time on the Soul of the Unexplained, my compadre, my good buddy, my co-host, the best researcher I know, Dr. Captain, neither doctor nor captain, Austin Burgess. Brother, welcome to the show.
Yo, thanks for having me on, y'all.
Right on.
Where's the clapping sound effect, man?
Right.
That intro deserves some clapping or something.
John, I have to go ahead and say, whoa.
That was awesome.
There we go.
Whatever that was amazing.
Whatever that was, let's hope it was copyright free.
Yes.
I have no idea. I think that was clapping.
It's close enough, yeah.
It was amazing.
John, I do have to say, I'm also a Broncos fan, so exciting season so
my
far.
man.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not fair. What the
My
That's
brother,
it,
I
everybody.
knew I liked this
Show's
guy.
canceled. The show is canceled.
Show
Thank
is
you for
officially
joining us here
canceled.
today on the Soul of the Unexplained.
We'll take
like,
the one seed.
subscribe. We'll see you next time.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm always
Actually, folks, I have to say, I have changed my allegiance. I don't know if you all can see that.
No, that was a heartbreaker.
And as you can see, every time I throw my support behind a team, it works out so well because the Buffalo Bills got blanked today by the, whoever the hell it was, gosh, they were playing the Eagles, yeah. So
Don Henley?
But hey, at least my Raiders have the first draft pick locked up, and I can't wait for them to cock that one up too.
They've got it locked up for the next 10 years, I think.
Look,
Right.
they're going to go on a point spree and just start having 100-point games. They're going to blow it. They're going to get themselves out of the draft picks.
I don't watch sports.
Look,
I'm not sure
football
the-
is a great sport.
I'm not sure the NFL can even be termed a sport anymore. It's more of a spectacle, really.
It is an entertainment event.
Are you guys
Yes, indeed.
all rigged? Because that's even more juicy.
Hey, that's a good question. Yeah. Good
Is
question.
what?
Oh, I was saying, are we saying it's rigged?
Oh God, it's very.
Well, we
rigged.
all saw what just happened with the Jake Paul Joshua Anthony rigged fight, where Joshua Anthony is now my goddamn hero for breaking Jake Paul's jaw because it wasn't scripted and he was supposed to lose. You know what? Sports, especially combat sports, are not supposed to be fixed. This is why.
Right. Well said. Well said. Well, we're going to do our best to avoid any broken jaws tonight, but of course, no promises, especially when I am drinking a exotic flavor of Fanta. I don't know if you guys can see this. This is from, I don't know if it's Japanese or Chinese, but no idea what the hell the flavor is, but that looks like it's a grape or some kind of diseased fruit of some kind, but who knows how it's going to taste. I just recently brushed my teeth, so probably not going to taste great anyway, but that's beside the point, folks. We're going to get started here. And what I wanted to talk about to get things started is this amazing Ghosts in the Mountains podcast that both Austin and Caleb are a part of. And they I don't know what episode you guys are on, but I just recently finished listening to the this great episode you guys did on the Rendlesham UFO case, which of course occurred, I want to say back in, what was it, 1980 or thereabouts.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you guys have got some great episodes where you really kind of dive into the folklore and the legends and ghosts and hauntings that take place in the state of North Carolina. And I've been absolutely drawn in by the storytelling that both of you do with some of those great bits of stories that come out of North Carolina. Let me ask you this to get started. What so far in this year that you've had now, as we're literally staring down 2026 in the face, it's a couple days from now, looking back on 2025, what has been one of your favorite stories or topics that you guys have covered so far? And Austin, let me start with you.
I'm gonna have to say our episode that we did on the Cherokee Little People, because as a personal topic, that's been one of interest to me for a long time. But on top of that, I think that's one that really was kind of the catalyst for Caleb and I starting the show. We would end up just hanging out, having a few beers, and after one thing or another, the conversation would be steered back to the Cherokee Little People, or the Yunwei Junsti, as they are called.
Nice. Right on. And Caleb, how about you? What as you look back on 2025, what stands out to you the most of the topics that you and Austin covered?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to echo Austin on that one initially because, like he had mentioned, I mean, this was one of these topics that really kickstarted our podcast because we would always end up talking about that. But one of the best parts for me getting into some of this stuff is really looking into these ghost stories around the region that I had heard of for years, and really, it's some I feel like we kind of got to a little bit closer to the bottom of what these things might be. Sometimes I think what was even more fun for me was walking away from a story that I thought we were going to immediately figure out was complete bullshit, and coming away with more questions than I had answers. And one of those specific episodes was during our Halloween season month of October, where we're trying to find some of the creepiest stuff we can. And we did an episode about Robert the Doll. And that whole story and the backstory behind it all has been one that has really perplexed me for so long. And I thought for sure we were going to walk in and walk out of that thing and just be like, this is all a bunch of nonsense. And dude, I have to say, I was genuinely blown away by the information that came out on that podcast, especially, due to Austin's incredible research capabilities. And yeah, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't listened to that one, that is a seriously creepy ass episode.
Yeah, and if you aren't familiar with Robert, the thing is, tons of people have this thing where they write him a letter, either that's apology letter, asking for permission, some type of thing to just acknowledge him, and almost, I guess permission's a good way to put it, to kind of move forward with some of that. So Caleb and I both wrote emails into Robert, but still a week later, I was sick with COVID, and Caleb was having animals dying in his wall. So yeah, take that for what you will.
I worry that we didn't write any letters asking for permission to talk about him. That's what's worrying me a little right now.
Robert the Doll
airs.
Yeah, right.
I hope that he grants us grace and forgiveness for talking about him. and understands that we love and appreciate him.
I'll find that email for y'all.
So, is it safe to say? Now, I do know of the Robert the Doll legend, and it seems to me to actually have a little more traction as being potentially legit than the famous Annabelle doll that the Warrens are so famously attached to. What would you guys say to that? Does that sound accurate? My assessment on that, or do you think
I would say
otherwise?
so. I mean, I think Annabelle probably took a little inspiration from Robert, if I had to say so. But I mean, like we were talking about things that made the news this year, Annabelle was had its own little news cycle there for a few weeks.
Right.
That's a big weird one. I mean, well, that was my question because I've always found, I mean, even when you just look at Robert the Doll compared to when you look at Annabelle, which is in all reality, she's a Raggedy Ann doll.
Raggedy Ann doll,
Mhm.
yeah.
In the movies, they obviously try to make her look a little bit more frightening. But I was always thinking, I was like, how is Annabelle, how does she have her own franchise? And there's a couple of movies that are based on Robert the Doll, but nothing that I've seen that really has done the baseline story any justice whatsoever. And
Yeah.
I think obviously that really is by and large because, you know, Ed and Lorraine Warren had attached themselves to so many different paranormal occurrences throughout the years. And so they start the Warren verse, you know, the Ed and Lorraine Warren verse. And obviously Annabelle's going to get this movie. But I tell you what, if somebody like, I don't know, Jordan Peele or somebody were to ever really look deep into the story of how Robert potentially came to be and really gave it the treatment, I feel like if it was done well, it could easily blow Annabelle out of the water. Sorry, Annabelle.
I would have to agree. And again, my I'm not as well read on the Robert legends as I'm sure you guys are, but what I do remember reading about it was plenty creepy. In fact, now I got to be honest, the Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls always kind of creeped me out when I was a kid. I never was a big fan of either one, but I also feel that there's an awful lot about what the Warrens have been involved with in the past tends to get embellished maybe a little bit, and I don't know how fair of an assessment that is, but I definitely I definitely really enjoyed the episode that you guys did on Robert on that, and the passion that you guys have for really kind of looking at this from the same kind of angle that Jonny and John and myself and Roger approach things from, is a skeptical but an open-minded approach, and trying to see how much of the actual, how much of the fact and fiction can we separate. And it's interesting that you made that comment earlier, Caleb, about how you were convinced that it was all you're gonna Scooby Doo this shit, and by the time you were done with it, you're gonna be able to dispel a lot of the stuff. And the really interesting thing, because I had the same exact viewpoint, because in regards to the UAP topic, for instance, I was never a UFO guy. I'd always believed that there's life elsewhere in the universe, that it's probably intelligent life. Some of it's probably way more advanced than we are because it's probably older than we are here on this planet. But I thought the likelihood of that kind of intelligent life actually getting to Earth was probably more fiction than anything. And now, here we are, we have that 2017 New York Times article that came out where all this stuff was revealed, and now we have this amazing Age of Disclosure documentary, which very dear friends of ours happen to be featured in. And so I've kind of found myself in a completely different place than I was when I went into this topic, at least as far as the UAPs go. And I've always had a casual passing interest in what they call the paranormal, ghosts, hauntings, shadow beings. And it wasn't until I started down this rabbit hole of the Sol of the Unexplained with Roger that I actually really had my first genuine paranormal encounter experience that turned me from being just a casual believer into being an experiencer. Have either of you guys ever crossed that threshold of just being the casual believer or having a passing interest to being an actual experiencer? And whichever one of you wants to tackle this first, go for it.
You take that one, Austin.
So it's interesting because I wouldn't consider myself as someone that's had an experience or an experiencer, at least nothing that I could definitively say without a shadow of a doubt that was a paranormal experience. But I've always kept my mind open to it. I'd say the closest thing I have is more of almost a psychological type experience where, for instance, it's someone that I know had recently passed, but for whatever reason, I didn't realize it at the time. But it was just one of those things where I kind of woke up, kind of a liminal space, dead of the night, almost like a sleep paralysis type situation. And it was just like almost a voice speaking directly to me of my friend that at the time I had no idea had just passed. And it wasn't till a couple months later that I realized they passed on the pretty much the exact time frame of when I had that dream or whatever you want to call it. So that kind of just opened my eyes to like, there's more out there that we just don't necessarily understand. And I think that it kind of speaks to itself that it's not so much everything's black and white. You have that kind of gray area of, yes, this is weird. Yes, this is something I can't explain, but I can't pinpoint or put my finger on how exactly to define that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a somewhat similar thing for me. And I think that the linchpin of like making Caleb Hanks a believer of ghosts in general is the full-bodied apparition, which I've never, ever experienced. I think for a lot of people that would make them believers because, if you see this traditional thing of like, here's this full-bodied apparition, it's a person, looks like a person directly in front of you, and then they disappear, and you're like, well, most people don't do that. So that's something else, And I keep talking about on our podcast that I've got all these regressed paranormal experiences because I have experienced some things in my life that are questionable. They're a little bit strange, to say the least. But a lot of those things have been like peripheral vision. And people see things out of the corner of their eye all the time that aren't there. But there was a specific instance that I had when I was like actually working on a TV program on Travel Channel with our ghost hunting crew, which I hate that term, paranormal investigation crew at the Capitol building in Raleigh. And I'm walking over the Senate chamber. And it's this really big building. I'm like up in the balcony and I look down toward the podium and I just see kind of like a white blob out of the corner of my eye down there. This is when I was about 16 years old. And turns out when the show comes out that they had captured exactly where I saw that. And I'd mentioned it to Josh. And then the next thing I know, there's cameras on me and they're asking me about this stuff. I just tell them, yep, saw some sort of kind of like human sized white, glob figure out of the corner of my eye. Next thing I know, on the TV program, they have surveillance footage of this exact same thing, exactly where I saw it. And they've got pictures of this thing that they've sent to like German photography specialists who they determined was completely inconclusive. They knew that the footage had not been tampered with because it was raw feed from the, security cameras that were there in the building. So again, here's this experience where I'm like, I don't know, maybe I saw something. And then there's this odd objective evidence, if that's what you want to call it, saying that maybe it was confirmed that I did see something. So again, I'm still waiting for that holy grail of being able to see the full-bodied apparition, although still question whether I want to see that or not. But I genuinely think, depending on, how it were to manifest, that I think I'd probably be filled with way more of a sense of wonder than a sense of fear,
Yeah.
See, what's funny is your description of a full-bodied Holy Grail apparition literally is what my first paranormal experience was.
Well, screw it out. No, I'm just kidding.
Straight up freaking thing.
That's crazy, man.
But the funny part is it isn't related anything whatsoever to the Skinwalker Ranch and hitchhiker type stuff that I dealt with in the past. My first thing was entirely separate.
Wow. I can't even imagine what that's like. My experience, especially the one that Roger and I had, and that made it even kind of more impactful because I had a witness that was there with me when we experienced it, and we both experienced it at the same time. And a lot of these incidents tend to be kind of singular, right? Where it's just one person who experiences it. But in those moments where there are multiple people that are witness to the event and they see and experience the same exact thing that you do, that puts a whole new level of real to it than some of the other instances. So I can't even, Jonny, I can't even imagine what that's what that's got to be like for you to see some of the things that you've encountered. Yeah. So
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, well, for me, it was a full-bodied apparition of a woman that died in the late 1600s that, like, 3 years later, I saw a painting and went, I know that person. And then
Wow.
was able to trace it and go, holy shit, because it was at their house at a historical site.
Oh.
And they just,
wow.
we were outside the building. No one had been in yet. None of the tour groups had been in yet. And before they let us in, I'm standing by one of the windows looking into the dining room, and a woman was standing there and bent over and got like right in my face and looked at me. I turned to look to the tour guide. I'm like, oh, I didn't know there was people here. And I look back, she's gone. And of course, the tour guide's like, what is this idiot talking about? And as she's trying to unlock the door to get into the place.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Of course, I'm like 5, 6 years old. You know, I'm just some stupid kid.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, we hear a lot that kids that age are a little more receptive, if you want to call it that. But, we've heard a lot of examples pretty similar to yours, kids at historical sites, houses that have sworn they've seen something, told their parents about it, and their parents are kind of just laughing it off, scratching their heads. But might
Yep.
mean more than a coincidence.
That overactive imagination.
John, you've been John Nyberger. You've been suspiciously quiet on this topic. I have a feeling. I'll just put it this way: how many times have you looked out your front door at night and there's one of the black-eyed children staring in your hole?
Never yet, but there was that one time at the Airbnb. I was convinced we were going to look out and see one.
Me and John had been staying up talking all night about just the spookiest stuff we could ever think of, and I was like, should we look out this curtain? He's like, I don't want to look out the curtain. I was like, I'm going to do it anyway because I'm an idiot. No black-eyed children, but worth a shot.
There was a chance, though. That place was creepy as hell, man.
Oh, yeah.
We got to bring a ghost box. That's what we got to do.
Yep.
I'll bring a Robert the Doll replica for next time for the Airbnb experience.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy!
Go put it on your bed before.
Just don't tell anybody. He's just going to wake up and it's staring at him.
And that's why you always bring extra pants.
That's right. That's right.
So let me ask you guys this: Have you guys like let's say, for instance, let's kind of backtrack here to the Cherokee Little People. What were some of the more interesting takeaways that you guys had from that? Where you specifically, Caleb, where maybe you were like, okay, there just might be something to this story after all. What were some of those little tidbits that maybe you can share with us?
Well, I've told these stories quite a bit recently, and I'll just give the very, very quick version of two encounters that I heard from people that had experienced this firsthand. One of them was a family friend who lived out in Barnardsville, North Carolina, said that they got a phone call from a neighbor that there's a bunch of little kids playing on this donkey that he owned. And he gets out there to see what's going on. And he said when he got close, some of them had full-grown beards. And they jumped off the donkey and were gone down into the bushes just like that. The other instance was I had a guy who was, no joke, on his deathbed, like coughing up blood into a napkin, staring me dead in the eye and saying to me, prefacing it with, "You are going to think I am completely crazy, but I promise you every word that I'm about to tell you is true." And he tells about this experience where he said there was a little man about between 2 and 3 feet tall that he described as looking like a Native American member of the Cherokee people. And he saw him when he drove down to the end of this driveway of where he was. It's a pretty long, kind of windy thing because he owned these cabins up here that he would rent out. Gets back up to the top of the mountain. He said, I don't know if he had a tunnel system or a twin brother, but that same little man was up at the top of the hill staring at me when I got back. And he said he just had this little shit-eating grin on his face both times. And he said it scared him so bad that he ran in the house and grabbed a gun, and he did not come out of his room until his wife got home. And I keep asking this question when people ask me about that story of what does this dude have to gain by telling me this when he is actively dying of lung cancer? I genuinely don't know. And if he is just spinning a yarn, then that's fine. But when I've heard these other stories from other people where they're not talking about this from a folklore perspective, they're talking about this as I saw this with my very own eyes. And then you have all these other stories that kind of start trickling along. And when I'm out in that area, you know, I was fortunate enough to be out in Bryson City, North Carolina, which is right there near there with some people. I was filming with a group of people called Small Town Monsters recently, and those guys are awesome. They make some killer documentaries. But we were talking about this stuff, and I met some people, and I was like, hey, have you ever heard of anybody that's like seen the Yunwi Junsti? And there was one guy that immediately just like, yep. And he tells me this other little crazy story, which I'm going to save that for a future episode. But again, it's like when you have these stories where people are talking about this so matter-of-factly, it at least makes you scratch your head a little bit about it.
For sure.
That story you told about the guy at the bottom of the hill, suddenly he's back at the top of the hill later. That genuinely freaked me out.
Yeah.
When I heard that story, because you did such a great job of telling it. I was just envisioning that and imagining like the environment and actually being there.
Oh yeah.
That would freak me the hell out.
Yeah.
When I heard that story, I was just thinking about the old leprechaun stories that I had heard from different people from Scotland, Ireland. Like leprechaun fairy tale type stories where they would piss them off, and everywhere they would go as they were riding down, they'd just be staring at them. And it's like, there's no way they got from here to here. There's no way. But they're just being followed and watched. It's freaky.
Yeah, and I can let Austin talk here in a minute, but it is very, very interesting to me also culturally how almost every single culture around the world has some version of the little people that they talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Little people and also giants. There's a lot of giants folklore out there with a lot of the Native American cultures. But Austin, go ahead and we'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off what Caleb said. My first introduction to the topic was when I was out living in Cullowhee, which is where Western Carolina University is located. And I was at the barber shop. There's old school guy that cuts my hair. I think he'd lived in Cullowhee 60 plus years, pretty much knew the place like the back of his hand, knew all the local lore and legends. And after a few minutes, he just kind of casually goes, have you ever heard about the Cherokee Little People before? And it wasn't any sort of like folklore telling. It wasn't your traditional fairy tale, anything like that. He was talking about when they excavated, the property that Western Carolina was built on, they were finding small tunnel systems. They were finding tiny human remains. They were finding legitimate proof that something small was inhabiting that area. And that's what really kind of set me off. I mean, I pretty much instantly went home and went down the research rabbit hole on that. But it's not just that area, and kind of central to Western North Carolina is where the story kind of is very prominent, but even down in Chimney Rock, down in Tallulah Gorge in Georgia, there are stories of the Cherokee Little People in those areas as well. So it's pretty widespread around the Southeast.
That's fantastic. I mean, I can imagine there's no shortage of legends and myths to explore, because just simply based off of how old the Appalachian Mountains are. I mean, they are, if I remember my history correctly, it's one of the older mountain regions in North America, perhaps even older than even the Rocky Mountains, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, correct.
Still, I mean, there's so much history there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, as far as I understand, they are some of the oldest mountains on the planet, which is, if I'm wrong about that, then we got to change our intro, because I basically said that. But on every episode. But that was one of the big appeals to us to do this stuff. I mean, obviously, Austin and I have been here a long time. Austin cheated on North Carolina and Colorado for a good long while. So, John, you got a kindred spirit here.
Right.
But, just like you were saying, I mean, there are things that we are finding out all the time that are connected to things that like landmarks that we've known about since we were kids, and never one time ever were to think like anything strange happened there. Right down the mountain in Old Fort, North Carolina. This was one of the most surprising episodes to me. I can't remember what episode it is. We just recorded episode 50, which is our last one of the year, which will be coming out next week. So one whole full year of doing Ghosts in the Mountains is a pretty big landmark. But not too long ago, somebody had written into the show and they said, have you ever heard about anything weird being associated with the Andrews Geyser down in Old Fort, North Carolina? So Old Fort is just down the mountain from Asheville, where we live. And of course, we'd heard of Andrews Geyser, and we've been through Old Fort a million times, been down to the geyser when I was a kid. Never had ever heard anything about this, but he tells this insane story about being down there, and his grandparents' ashes are spread there, and that was his plan. Like, that his family was going to, when he eventually died, that was the plan. Was he and his wife were supposed to have their ashes scattered down there. And he said that he and his wife went there one night and experienced something so dark and strange and oppressive that they were immediately like, we're not going to be spread down there. It's not happening. And then Austin does his thing, and he turns on the research flashlight, and he just starts going down the rabbit hole. And there are account after account after account after account of crazy things. And it's tied to some really truly dark and depressing history of the building of the railroad there or between Asheville and Old Fort. I couldn't even believe what I was hearing when we got as far as we did into it, truly.
And one of the weirdest things about it too was this isn't like a ghost story or even a location that's really associated with anything paranormal. It wasn't on either of our radars, and if it wasn't for a listener writing in talking about his creepy experience, we probably wouldn't have dug into this. But the deeper we did, we're finding, yes, the dark historical side of it, and then we find other instances of people that have had eerily similar incidences in that area.
Wow. The only thing I can relate that to is on my mom's side of the family. Her ancestors were the first European settlers that settled the Catskill Mountain region of upstate New York. And we're talking back in the 1640s, 1660s, the group that came over with Henry Hudson and settled the area that is now Kingston, New York, and that whole Catskill Mountain area. So all the great stories that come out of Washington Irving of like the Headless Horseman and Rip Van Winkle and all that stuff. My grandfather used to tell me, because he lived in that remote region of the Catskills growing up, and he says that there's all he would always tell me stories about little people, kind of like elves that were, rumored to be there, that would be there, like in the Rip Van Winkle story, that would, bring people that wandered into the area. They'd, get them drunk, and they'd, experience all these really, really weird and trippy things. So it's really fascinating to know that there's areas outside of, for me, the areas outside of the Catskill Mountain region of upstate New York where similar kind of type things are going on. And it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that the Native Americans, like the Cherokees, have their tradition of this. And one thing that I've learned in researching all this weird and crazy stuff that Roger and I, since going down this rabbit hole with the podcast, is that there's an awful lot there that seems to substantiate these old legends and stories that come out of the First Nations and the indigenous people here that were on this continent before the European settlers made their way here. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh, man. Dude, I love New England. I genuinely love it because there's just such a creepy vibe up there, as John Stratton understands. And
Yeah.
dude,
Only been there once. It was creepy
right. Yeah. Well, you're closer to it than I am.
by a tiny margin.
But my wife and I was starting to work on a comic book project, and I was like kind of thinking that the comic book might take place somewhere in like an alternate dimension version of Connecticut, just because, that's just kind of, there's some little towns up there in the middle of nowhere where it's like you wouldn't really think too much about them, but they exist. And it's kind of like a, just an eerie vibe. And so I was like, I think it'd be really beneficial for me to like soak in some of this inspiration. And so my wife and I, we just took a trip, and we just hit all the spooky spots like right before October a year ago.
Oh,
and dude,
perfect timing.
It was so great because, the further north we get, it's actually getting cold up there, and you're actually starting to see a little bit of the leaves changing. And so we did basically what I call the pumpkin spice white people tour, and we hit like all the main spots. We hit Gettysburg. I'd never been to Gettysburg. Stayed not too far from 3 Mile Island, which I thought was actually pretty funny. And then, we did Salem, we did Sleepy Hollow, we did all these things. And I wanted to bring this up because this was the only somewhat what I could attribute well, I guess it's not the only one now, but it's one of the few paranormal experiences that I had that could have been paranormal since we started the podcast. And, you know, when you're driving through Gettysburg, you're driving through, here's 20 miles of battleground on this side. You know, there's miles and miles on this side. And there's this one little makeshift hospital that we walked by when we were kind of walking up through one of the main memorial areas. And, you know, I had just bought a car that had pedestrian detection on it. And I guess you know where this is going. We're leaving Gettysburg, and it's dark. There is a blood moon in the sky. I'm not shitting you, dude. Blood moon in the sky. Shout out to another great podcast. It always gets me in the mood in Halloween time. I was throwing on some Weird Darkness that's hosted by Darren Marlar. I've always really liked his stuff. He sets a great spooky tone. And here's this blood moon. We come driving by this little hospital and beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, shut up. Just shut your damn mouth. It's like, and obviously we're looking. I mean, there's nobody there. So that was weird. And Jim, I wanted to throw something out there to you because this just came to me. You had mentioned that you were freaked out by Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy dolls, right?
Yeah.
So here's a weird piece of history for you. If I'm wrong about this, I don't think I am, because I remember repeatedly before I did this, people were saying, I got this gig during COVID. I was playing some bluegrass, and these people were saying, the place that you're going to be playing is the birthplace of the Raggedy Ann doll. Like, it was invented here. And I got to play there on Halloween. So I bet you would have loved that one, Jim.
Yeah, I would have been there with bells on, brother.
Did you play a Toy Factory?
Yeah.
See, what you really have got to do is become a Civil War reenactor, because I have heard some terrifying stories
Yep, me too.
from really hardcore reenactors where, like, these guys, they go as far as to, like, they camp out overnight, they have watches, they have pickets. There's nobody that's going to come and observe, but yet they're having actual pickets out there on the Gettysburg reenactment stuff, all that. And I'd heard stories about how they would run into other sentries that were not reenactors, that were not really there while they were doing their routes and keeping guard.
Man,
and it's just the freakiest thing.
that's an interesting.
I've heard.
Yeah, interesting rabbit hole to
I've heard
dive
some
down.
of the same. Yeah. Well, some of the most compelling, I guess I would say, ghost footage that's caught on camera has actually originated from people driving through the Gettysburg National Battlefield and capturing stuff that really legitimately looks like the genuine article, where there are these spirits that, I mean, that's the only way I could describe them, is these ghostly images that appear, and they're moving so rapidly. And just it does not surprise me. I'd have a hard time believing that with all the history that went down there at the Gettysburg battlefield, that there wouldn't be some kind of imprint that's been done on the land there by all of the tremendous loss of life. And just you know, I don't have any scientific way to back up my belief on it, but I think that that's probably a very spiritually charged place, the Gettysburg battlefield. And even though I grew up about 3 hours away from where the Gettysburg battlefield is, I, for whatever reason, never made my way there. So that's still on my bucket list of places I want to go.
Oh, man.
I'm only 4 hours from there, and I still haven't gone.
Dude, the one thing that I will say is, like, they did such an incredible job with the memorial side of the site, and the statues and the things that they've erected up there are just so huge, and they just give you this sense of importance that really does an incredible job of making you pay attention to the information that you're taking in. And I mean, it's weird because I wasn't really necessarily expecting Gettysburg to be one of the places that really kind of fascinated me the most on that trip. But dude, I came away from it just being like, I don't know, there was just something, I don't know. There's just, like you said, it's like it to me, and I don't even consider myself to be somebody that's even necessarily like sensitive to energies and those sorts of things. But there is, all I could describe is just a very intense vibe in that area that I think is undeniable.
I don't doubt that one bit. I mean, the closest I've come personally to experiencing anything like that would be, when I was in DC recently, I went to the Vietnam Memorial, and I've always been a very, very patriotic person. I've always been a big supporter of the men and women that serve in the military. And I didn't expect to be overcome with emotion the way that I was when I saw the Vietnam Memorial. I mean, I was literally moved to tears. I'm not ashamed to say, but I mean, I was not expecting to feel that. And even though, obviously none of the battles for Vietnam took place there, but still it was a place of such reverence. And it was the first time also, as I've talked with you, Jonny, before, about the first time that I went to the National Holocaust Museum there in Washington, D.C. And now I'm a student of history. I love history. I'm a big history buff. And so I knew all about, the Holocaust and stuff like that. And it wasn't until, I made it through the entire, all of the exhibits at the museum. And it wasn't until I got to the very end of the exhibit in the museum where there were just millions upon millions of tiny candles that were lit in this absolutely massive, gorgeous marble hall that was meant to symbolize the lives of each Jew that was murdered in World War II. And when I experienced that, I was literally brought to my knees and sobbed and wept openly, like we're talking full on ugly cry, which is something I never do. And so I think there's definitely, I'm somebody that's always believed in the afterlife. I believe that when we experience physical death, our, if you're a Christian, you'd term it your spirit or your soul. If you're more of an agnostic, your lifeblood, your life force, rather, your conscience, your energy. I believe that part of you lives on after experiencing physical death. And so whenever we come upon places that are like that, particularly a battlefield where you're standing in the place where all this mass carnage took place, if I felt something as strongly as I did at the Holocaust Museum or at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., I can't even imagine what it would be like to stand on the grounds of Gettysburg, knowing what took place there and knowing the history there, knowing all the bloodshed that happened. I'd have a hard time believing otherwise, that it wasn't a place that would be that charged with energy and vibe like you're talking about, Caleb.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, kind of what you're talking about, there's a lot of different schools of belief about, what ghosts are. There seems to be a couple of different variations of what ghosts are. And we did an episode not too long ago with the bro Micah Hanks, where we tried to do as well as we possibly could to really, look at all of the things that have been written or talked about, or just the philosophy behind it, the science behind it, and look at all of the potentials of, like, okay, as far as we can tell, looking at as many different examples as we possibly can, what are ghosts? And it goes down so many rabbit holes, and I'll pass this over to Austin. But I mean, Austin, you and I constantly run into these stories of, like, here's this ghost and it shows up and it doesn't seem to acknowledge you. But then just recently on one of our Christmas episodes, we had this story that we found about this apparition of this person's mother who shows up in this room with them on Christmas Eve, and she's just sitting in a rocking chair. She doesn't communicate verbally, but she just sits there and smiles and looks at, her son. Austin, in that same line of thought, are there any stories that were super compelling to you that were like, this to me seems very interesting, or something that you even brought up to me, which I hadn't even really looked into, was, the stone tape theory, which comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk to anything about that sort of stuff? Because I like stone tape theory and that whole thing I just find fascinating.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and start this off by just saying that stone tape theory is a pseudoscientific concept. Doesn't necessarily mean there's nothing to it, just means there's no scientific backing to it. But I still think it's an interesting enough theory to kind of bring up, because we've ran into a lot of instances where these areas are emotionally heavy, emotionally charged, if you will, a lot of times through tragic incidents. And the theory behind stone tape theory is that these emotions, this energy, this sadness, anger, whatever it is that this person holds when they leave their physical body, is somehow imprinted into the environment, the rocks, the stones in the area. And through some way that I can't scientifically explain, or anyone can scientifically explain, it has a way of triggering under certain circumstances and almost replaying. And it's almost like a window in time more than an active cognitive apparition, if you will. And I think that's interesting too, because we've run into a lot of those instances. The one that kind of is the top of my mind goes back to the Reynolds Mansion, where Micah really did a lot of groundbreaking investigation there. But one of the main stories was there was again, small child going to tour this historic house, or this family going into to tour this historic house, and they see a small child on the front of the porch there. And they ask the tour guide, like, "Oh, whose children, whose kids are those?" And they're like, "We're the only ones here. I don't know what you're talking about." But it was almost like when they described the child, they were trying to wave or interact with it, but it was almost like the child couldn't recognize or even sense that they were present with them.
Wow. Yeah, I guess what that brings to mind to me with the way you describe that, Austin, is you hear it, at least I hear it talked all the time, matter can never be created nor destroyed,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And then that energy has to go somewhere, right?
Mhm.
That's the way that our current understanding of physics and science is that energy needs to go somewhere. So to that end, I don't discount the possibility that this energy that people have in them, whether it's great amounts of love, great amounts of anger, grief, what have you, that's still an energy. I mean, we think about whenever we feel emotions,
Mhm.
there's some kind of an energy attached to emotions, right? When you're really psyched, when you're like say when you're at a concert that you're just really amped up to be at, and you're just the band are on point, and you're just caught up in this moment of absolute euphoria and jubilation. And then there's also on conversely, there's also instances where you are just so frustrated, anxiety, anger, whatever, that energy is still attached to those emotion. It's emotion driven, but it's still energy, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. Am I wrong?
No,
Am I wrong in that?
I completely agree. And I think that adds credence to when you go into these areas, you hear people describe it as something like emotionally heavy. It's something that they can
Right.
feel that they can't exactly describe or maybe even understand.
It is this question of the different types of ghosts, or what is a ghost, is fascinating, because you do get several distinct categories of reports, right? And one of them is the non-interacting spirit, or something where it's almost like you're watching a loop, a tape loop.
Exactly.
It's like something is just repeating, and occasionally someone is there to witness it. But it's like that is imprinted on the environment, like you said, Austin. And that's fascinating to me, because that's very distinct from the poltergeists or other types of hauntings, where there's something like actively interacting with you, trying to scare the crap out of you. It's like telling you to get the hell out of its space. But these are it's just there. It's just something you're witnessing. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
Well-
it's almost a tape loop.
Yeah. Well, talking about the different, we'll just call them powers of the ghosts and their different capabilities and or reported abilities. We came upon something really, really strange in an episode, because one of my first, what I will attribute to being called, a paranormal occurrence, was when I was probably, 14 or 15. I was staying over at a friend's house, and somebody in his family was related. He was adopted, but somebody in his family, his adopted family, was related to the judge that sentenced Ted Bundy to death. And so he was really interested in that case in general. And so he had this big folder that he and his dad had kept since like the 70s of just some clippings of some big pictures of Ted Bundy and some different articles about the whole case. And one of the pictures was the moment that Ted Bundy is sentenced to death, that he gets that news, and he's very angry, and he's got his hand up, and he's like screaming. And so we had that out on the dresser, and we're all hanging out late at night doing teenager stuff, just being idiots and talking crap. And, you know, late in the evening, we've had the ceiling fan on in the room the entire night. We're just all kind of like sitting in the same spots, just talking about stuff. We do start talking about paranormal stuff. And it was like the sun is just starting to come up. Next thing I know, I just hear, and we look over, and that giant ass magazine cutout of Bundy with his hand up is literally floating like this through the room. That thing had sat on the dresser for like 4 or 5 hours. Same climate, nothing going on. Nobody was getting up and moving the air current in the room or anything. We freaked the fuck out, and we just haul ass out of that room. Scared the living bejesus out of us. So what was wild about this, we do an episode on the podcast called Faces of Evil Volume 2. And if that ain't a face of evil, I don't know what isn't. Or what is. And, you know, Austin starts looking into this whole thing. I'm thinking that there's no way there's anything. I didn't really know what he was going to find or that he was really even looking into this after I had put this story together. He starts looking into this stuff, and there are multiple instances of inmates in the prison that Ted Bundy was in when he died. But then the other thing was, there's all these other places where people have seen what they would call the ghost of Ted Bundy. And I was always thinking, like, well, why is he going to come to North Carolina? And Austin, would you like to tell what the quote was from that particular female investigator that was looking into this, what it was?
Yeah, I don't remember it verbatim, but I will say I found an article, and it was by a psychology PhD, so someone that was treating this from the most scientific standpoint that they could. And the gist was that it appears that in the afterlife, Ted Bundy's ghost seems to roam much like he did in his own life, which kind of makes sense.
Well, I think the word, the operative word that she used was, it seems that Ted Bundy can teleport.
Or travel. I think travel.
Yeah, travel or something like that. I was like, oh my God. Like, we're filming the pod. You know, we're not like filming, we're recording. And then right as we're talking about this, some of our soundproofing falls off the wall. And I'm literally on the episode like, get out of here, Mr. Bundy.
Johnny, how many times have we seen that happen?
Freaky. I mean, my lights always, for some reason, like my lights will go out. My power source will just completely die. Like all sorts of problems. But what's funny about Ted Bundy that's kind of creepy in a way is a really good friend of mine's wife actually met Ted Bundy when he was on his spree.
Damn.
So, and she didn't know anything really about it until she saw the trial, all that stuff in the news, and went, holy crap, thank God I didn't actually stop. Because she saw him on the side of the road in his, what was it, like a Beetle that he drove?
VW,
Yeah. And he looked like he was stranded, so she kind of stopped and asked if he was okay, and she got a weird vibe and drove off. So it's like, ugh, that's freaky. And now this person telling me this is like one of the most honest people. Like, I don't think that she would even lie about like the smallest of things. So I don't know why she would lie about that. That's just one of the freakiest things in the world, to think that someone I know was almost one of his victims.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's really kind of difficult to nail down with any kind of quantifiable data, I suppose. But, you know, are we dealing with disembodied spirits like we would be in the case of, you know, if it was actually Ted Bundy's, you know, ghost or spirit or whatever you want to call it? Or are we dealing with, you know, something that's never had a body, you know, something that's always been in what we would term a spirit or energy form, and it doesn't have an actual corporal flesh and blood kind of makeup to it. It's something that's always fascinated me. But I mean, I still am a firm believer in there being life after death. You know, my religious and spiritual upbringing makes me believe that, but also it's just something that makes sense to me, because I believe a lot of what we see, including in the UAP realm, is in some way tied to consciousness. And how do I articulate that? I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure out how to, but I think consciousness or what we call consciousness, or what, again, what other, people will call a spirit or your life force, your soul, whatever. I believe it's very real, and I believe that it exists separately from our actual physical bodies. And I believe that it's that consciousness, that spirit, what have you, that lives on after we die, after we experience physical death. And I had a very, I think I've shared this with John and Jonny and Roger before, but I myself had a very personal experience where when my mother was on her deathbed, and I had always asked my mom, because she had told me before that she was there in the moments when both of her parents and several of her siblings who preceded her in death, where she was there with them at that moment where they passed. And she talked about it being a very, very special moment to her. And so I remember telling my mother that if I had the opportunity to be there with my mom when it came her time, that I wanted to be there when she experiences her last breath, as it were. And so to kind of set this story up, my mom, they'd put her into a medically induced coma, and they knew that she was going to pass very soon. And so I jumped in the car with my family and made the 13-hour drive from Salt Lake City to Phoenix, Arizona, where my mom was. And all this time, just hoping and praying that we got there before my mom passed. And you hear the nurses when we got there even said that, your mom she can't respond to you, but she can still hear you. And so we got there, and I'm sitting there at my mom's bedside, holding her hand and talking to her, and just started, talking to her about some of the fond memories. And I asked her, I said, Mom, if you're still there and if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. And sure enough, a few seconds later, she squeezes my hand to let me know that she's still there, even though she's, not there. And so, of course, we already knew that her systems were shutting down. They'd pulled her off life support, so we knew the end was coming. And so I I laid down next to her bed, just to kind of rest, because I just driven 13 some odd hours to get to where she was. And in the room with me were my father and one of my older sisters. And I'd fallen asleep, and just dead asleep, and I was woken up by what to this day I am absolutely certain was my mother's voice. I just simply heard heard my name, and my mother's voice saying, Jimm. That's all it was. And so it woke me up, and literally within seconds of me sitting up, I was able to catch my mom taking her last breath. And I know there's no way that I can scientifically prove it, but I am 100% convinced that that was my mom honoring that commitment that she and I had made with each other, and that she knew how much it meant to me to be there by her side and to be in that moment when she took her last breath. And I know my mother didn't speak those words physically to me, and I know that my mom, I think her spirit, if you will, had already left her body at that point, but she knew that it was still important to me to be there to see that moment happen. And so because of that, I believe it's my firm belief that we do live on after death, and that this energy that we carry with us, I believe that it continues on after we experience death. And we can speculate on the nature of the afterlife all we want to, whether it's in a different dimension than we are, or whether, what have you. But I do believe, as you guys have been saying, this energy that these spirits, these ghosts, if you will, I think it's real. I really do. And I feel pity for people that don't maybe necessarily feel that there really is something after this life, because I feel that there is. And but Sorry for getting all serious on everybody
No,
there,
Oh,
but
Jim,
thank
you're
you for
good. Thank
sharing
you
that
for
with us.
sharing this with us.
that's just been my experience.
Oh, truly,
And-
man. Again, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that's a pretty raw, emotional thing to talk about, and I have to say that it is stories exactly like what you're talking about right there that really have kept, the conversation afloat for me over the years, because there are tons and tons. In fact, I would say, as far as the reports go, more often than not, that somebody experiences something. I would just classify it under strange or borderline paranormal in those last waking moments. And a lot of people talk about it being this, dump of the of endorphins going into your brain to help you pass on. But the times that I have heard of people talking about their loved one about to cross over and have just been like, "Oh, hey, oh shit, I haven't seen you in 30 years because you've been dead. How you doing?" And they're like talking to somebody that nobody else can see. I mean, that is a very, very, very consistent thing. And again, it could be this the brain doing what it does to help you transition out of this realm. But I don't know. I think I've heard too many stories where what you could call synchronistic things have happened as loved ones have been passing on. There's just too many to look at. And that is really one of the biggest things for like Austin and I is, again, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at the idea of the ghost phenomenon. And some people, they do look at it from a religious background. Some people are trying to look at it from the scientific. Sometimes people are trying to bridge the two, and I don't have any problem with that at all. I think the more angles that we can look at this whole entire thing, the better, really. But to Austin and I, when we started this podcast, we have never, ever once said on the podcast that we think we know what ghosts are, what the phenomenon is. We never say that they are this thing or that thing. The one consistency that we continually are able to report is that there are too many people that have had strange experiences. There are too many people that have seen what they would describe as an apparition or a ghost. And that's why we're doing this thing. That's why we're doing this podcast, because even if at the end of the day, and I don't personally necessarily believe that this is the case, but even at the end of the day, if it were to all come down to this being some sort of mass human experience that is a completely psychological phenomenon, that in itself is incredibly fascinating. Why do we experience this archetype continually? Why do people across the planet experience this archetype? Now, I personally, after everything I've heard and looked into and all the things that Austin has brought to the table, I genuinely think there's way more to the story than just that. But, this is our first year. Who knows what we're going to not find out or find out in the next how many ever years, we continue on with the podcast. But I have to say, overall, closing in on a year of being able to do this together, number one, brother, I can't pat you on the back more, Austin, because, dude, this experience with you has been so fun. It has already opened up some really wild doors for us to go do things that we didn't know we were going to be able to do. We recently were able to do our first, like, what I would call decently large-scale paranormal investigation of a hot spot down in Lake Lure, North Carolina, that we've been wanting to get to for a very long time. And, dude, just going to say, way more shit happened than that I was not expecting, and than not. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I'll just tag on to that, and I didn't realize this until today, Caleb, but the EMF reader that we were using whenever we had that consistent spike for about 5-10 minutes there, I just pulled it out today to see. Battery's completely drained. Haven't used it since that, so
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, that's good, because those are brand new batteries, so all right.
Exactly.
We've seen
The
that
darn
happen before,
batteries.
haven't we,
Yeah.
Johnny?
That sounds familiar.
A time or two. I do want to say, though, there is a really fascinating and hard to describe change whenever someone is about to pass on. That I don't know if I would call it a sixth sense at this point, but after having been there for so many times that this has occurred for someone that they've passed away, there's a subtle change to the air. There's a subtle change to just the feeling as someone is getting ready to pass on. And, you know, I couldn't tell you how many times I've been there for that. It's quite astronomical, probably over the, decade that I've been responding to 911 calls over the years. But that there's a very interesting change when someone is passing away, and you can tell that it's about to happen when you get used to it and you notice. And then when it does happen, there's a real noticeable change to how everything feels, how the air feels. And I don't know if people are able to grieve it better when they're there for it, but I feel like in my experience, that is really a big thing, is people being able to be present for that.
Oh, 100%. And I would also say that to the point that Caleb was making, my mother exhibited all that behavior that you were talking about, where she would start having these conversations with people that weren't there. And when you would ask her about it, you'd say, "Ma, who are you talking to?" She's like, "Well, can't you see I'm talking to your Aunt Connie?" Well, guess what? Aunt Connie died in 1952.
Right.
So, and
Yep.
she's having full on conversations. And my mother was one of the most calm, even keeled, principled people I've ever met. And we initially thought that maybe it was onset of dementia when she was having these moments happen. And we knew that when my mom, before they put her into the coma, she was fully lucid. She knew, which end was up. I mean, everything. So it was, I tend to believe that, again, Caleb, whether it's an actual explainable, perfectly rational, prosaic psychological condition that happens where your memory goes, you're just kind of like doing one final recap of your life,
Your
kind of type
life is
thing.
flashing before your eyes.
That might be what it is.
Yeah.
But it's,
I mean, my
but
great
it,
grandmother did the same things, but she was in the full, deep hold of dementia, but she would be having conversations with all these family members, her husband, people that passed away many years ago. And it's a very common occurrence. And that is one of the things that I've had with some of my patients, where when they start talking and rambling and you realize they're talking to their husband that passed away 20 years ago, you know that the time is approaching pretty soon.
yeah.
But I do have a question, not to throw the topic too much, but it's a question we absolutely have to ask because I've been dying to know this myself.
The Dino
Here it
Beaver
comes.
is real.
I know the Dino Beaver is real. I'm looking at him every day.
You want
I
to know something great?
framed a photo of you to remind me every day. But
I got to tell you just real quick. I have a history with Buc-ee's. If you watch the last Sol of The Unexplained, I've got two little Buc-ee's back there. Lane Marshall from Paranormal Palaver, I can never say his damn podcast right, sent me a $75 gift card for Buc-ee's this year for Christmas.
that's amazing.
That's awesome.
That's
I'm like,
funny.
Lane,
I love me
if you're
some
listening, we
Buc-ee's.
love you, brother. Thank you.
I've got beaver nuggets upstairs somewhere. I just haven't
Nice.
eaten them.
Sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
No, you're all awesome. It's great. Now, where in the goddamn hell did the name Dr. Captain come from?
Oh, dude, well, you know me. Every single episode. I mean, dude, I spent years on stage playing bluegrass, and every single night, I would try not to tell the same jokes because I would try to come up with stuff on the fly to sharpen the knife of wit. And obviously, I have not gotten any better because if I had, I would have given him a better name than the Dr. Captain. But here's the weird thing, and we've talked about this. I want to make merchandise for Dr. Captain. Just have his face and DCB on there. Because, dude, it's just so, I just started randomly calling you random things. I mean, I think you can hear, the progression of it as the podcast goes on. But one day, it just lands on Dr. Captain, and that was just the one that stuck. I don't know why. But he loves it, don't you, Austin?
Oh yeah.
100%. We are getting you like a 18th century, Commodore Captain hat from, the Royal Navy.
Love it.
And a
Well,
white
we're-
doctor's coat.
Hitchhiker's going to have to write a song. You down with DCP? Yeah, you know me.
Yes.
Dr. Captain.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
But I
good,
think
good,
fitting.
good stuff.
I think what would be really, really awesome is if we could somehow figure out a way to get him an honorary doctorate, and then somehow figure out a way to make him an honorary captain. Then I can't say
You know how to do that, right?
How do you do it? Go to
Just start
Join
emailing.
Congress.
Start emailing a bunch of universities, build up a portfolio of just all the things that he's done, and start trying to find a professor that loves paranormal stuff
Yeah.
at a university so that they can advocate and just see if you can do it. Get an absolutely ridiculous university out there to give you an honorary doctorate.
Where are you at, Darby Orcutt?
I don't know about an honorary captain though. I've never heard that phrase.
I think all you got is
all you gotta do is test.
Universal Life Church thing, and then perform a marriage on a boat. I think they make you a captain automatically.
Okay.
Yeah, all you have to do is take some tests, and you can get your boater's license, and then you can take the tests to become a captain. It's perfect.
Bro, you could actually become the doctor captain. I think this is something that we should pursue.
Career
This could
trajectory
happen.
right here.
This could happen.
And you can buy a little plot of land in Scotland online, so you can be a lord.
Already,
Lord
Ooh,
Doctor Captain.
Lord Doctor Captain.
yeah. I guess I actually am a lord because I did that. Apparently, I found out that was supposedly a scam, but hey, I'm sticking by it. I'm a lord.
I did it too, even though it probably is a scam, because I want to be able to drink scotch and tell people that I'm a laird.
Well, Lord Stratton, I think there's no better way than to drink some scotch and be lord.
You can then be known as the powerful. How would it be the paranormal potentate?
I have a nice single malt from the Highland regions that I'm sipping on as my cough medicine.
I forgot to grab another Guinness before the podcast, so I'm sitting here empty. But I'll telekinetically
Go-
in.
Go get your ass up and get one, brother.
I'll
Come on.
I'll be
weep
right back.
for you. So, Austin, while he
yes,
can't
indeed.
hear you, what kind of terrible things can you tell us about him?
I don't have anything bad to say.
Yes, indeed.
Oh.
Oh,
We
no,
love the
it's-
Dino Beaver. He's one of the greatest human beings I've ever met.
It's so
Yep.
funny to hear
Yes.
him officially addressed as the Dino Beaver because I've heard the nickname referenced, but I haven't heard him addressed as the Dino
Well,
Beaver.
Do you
Until
know
tonight.
how that kind of started?
I get the gist of it. Him showing up in the Buc-ee's onesie was probably part of the.
So
the
the first
equation.
time he went to my parents' house, of course my parents had already met Micah. They knew him.
Had no idea
But-
who I was.
Caleb rings the doorbell at the front door and knocks on the door wearing a Buc-ee's onesie, a Buc-ee's one of those hats that has the ears and everything. And I'm pretty sure he had a Buc-ee's beach towel as a cape. And as soon as they opened the door, he was dancing. I think there might have been a song, so it was a song and dance number. And that is how they were introduced to him.
I don't know.
And then he
if it
starts
was-
talking about the Dino Beaver in Utah.
That was the whole point, is because when I came to meet everybody, the only thing I knew about Skinwalker Ranch at this point was about the Dino Beaver, because it's just too freaking funny. Of course, that's what I'm going to single in on. So we're driving on the way, completely unplanned. I didn't even know there was a fucking Buc-ee's on the way to get there. And we see the Buc-ee's up there, and I'm like, Dino Beaver. Oh, Micah, we got to stop. We pop in the Buc-ee's. I think the first year it was just the onesie. And then, everybody's like, okay, Micah's brother's obviously insane. This is great. Let's hope he can play music, because if not, he's out of here. So then the next year I was like, relatively expensive joke, but I'm committed. So we go back to Buc-ee's, and I buy the Buc-ee's hat, like the thing with the ears on it. I buy a towel. I make the cape. I buy Buc-ee's slippers. I've got the onesie on, and I roll in, and your dad was laughing so hard about it, he screenshotted on the security camera and texted it to me.
I don't even think Travis has seen you in that yet, has he?
No, he hasn't.
Yeah, he
You'll have
always
to
shows
complete
up too damn
costume.
late.
But
You got to complete the costume. You get like a T-Rex mask.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the cherry on the cake was, it's the first night I meet John. It's the first night I meet Jimm. Unfortunately, Lord Stratton was not there, but we're all hanging out. Obviously, John, your dad is a legendary figure. We're all hanging out, at his place, and we're all getting to know each other. And having a couple of drinks, just, broing out, getting to know each other as the band unit. And there's this beautiful picture of me sitting there in the Buc-ee's onesie with everybody. It's like, here I am with legendary
Yes, indeed.
Stratton and Beaver onesie.
So before I actually met you at Phenomenon, I was given like a pep talk speech by my mom explaining to me who you were. And I was just like, I'm either going to absolutely love this guy and we're going to be brothers and this is going to be fantastic, or I'm not going to be able to handle this person. And I'm going to need to send him to a psych ward to get rid of him. That was it. There was no in between.
Well, it's interesting because it's like, I'm not a very hyper person, but I'm a very eccentric person. And I think that some people don't know, like, they can't understand. It's just like, he's not really like loud or like running all over the place, but his mind is this constant stream of just the most crazy shit I've ever heard. And I'm like,
He's different.
yeah, I like that. And honestly, your mother is so very sweet to me because like your mom and dad, they right off the bat got what I was putting out there, and they have come to really enjoy it. And your mother is just so very sweetly sarcastic about it. And it makes me laugh a lot because I just love your parents so much, and they've just become dear friends of ours. And I'm just so glad that we're all in each other's lives, dudes. And I'm very, very, very happy that, Austin, you're getting to finally meet these dudes, because I've been hanging with these guys for a minute. And man, it's just been a wild, very fun ride. And it's just like, I always kind of have this motto of when it comes to just like your experiences in life and your adventures, within reason, I'm like, hey, the weirder the better. And brothers, we get weird. It's great. I love it.
Yes,
Stay
indeed.
weird.
Welcome to the family, Dr. Captain.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we'll have to get you out to Alabama sometime. I mean,
Yeah, I would love to.
I haven't been in, I don't even know how long anymore, but we've all got to get out there, play some music, and hang out. Because I'm almost getting to the point where I can call myself a drummer. Almost.
Heck yeah.
I'm not very
Nice.
good, but I'm starting.
Oh, dude, you were doing great the last time I heard you play.
I mean, I'll probably end up recording myself because I've been doing like 30 minutes to an hour, like at least a week, probably about 2 hours a week of just drumming lately. I'm not that good, so
You know what
folks
you
at
need,
home,
Johnny?
don't judge me yet.
You need some fun dip, brother.
I tell you what, if I ever have to sit in and play the drums on stage with y'all, we're gonna pour Fun Dip or Focaine all over the drums. So every time I hit, we get a smoke cloud.
Oh, heck yeah.
John, I need you to go to the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z and practice drums until you can do what I can do. And then that way I can just play guitar because it's easier.
I'm getting there. I'm finally to the point where I'm starting to learn songs. I only know two.
Well, I'll tell you what I think needs to happen. And I can't remember if it was Johnny or Johnny that brought it up last time, but we need to go on a frickin' Bigfoot expedition in North Carolina.
Oh, that was
with
me.
the Hanks brothers and the Dr. Captain, and do a full-on hitchhiker, Ghosts in the Mountains and Sol of the Unexplained Bigfoot expedition with everybody, because I think that could be life-changing.
Well,
That's a documentary waiting to happen.
100%.
It's a brilliant idea.
We'll partner up with the Small Town Monsters people, and we'll just make a whole movie out of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, hell yeah.
I've been saying, I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, but there's this thing I've been trying to do for a long time, and the acronym, strangely enough, and fortunately and unfortunately enough, is phallic. Fear and Loathing in Cherokee. Because this would be the perfect place to go and look for Bigfoot, because Micah and I have actually done that very thing in Cherokee, North Carolina, because not too long ago in the very early 2000s, there was a report of somebody seeing a Sasquatch right out there in Cherokee, North Carolina. So Micah, being the consummate boots on the ground researcher that Dr. Captain Burgess would one day take the helm of, because he's the most boots on the ground son of a bitch I've ever known. I keep saying that. I never mean bad towards your mother. I love your mother. She's a very sweet lady. But, dude, like, if you want to do that, Cherokee is the spot, because there's a wonderful casino out there too.
Yeah. And you have the Thomas Divide there too, so you could have the ghost light phenomenon tied in with it.
Ooh. Yeah, it's basically,
See?
if you're not unfamiliar,
Brown Mountain Lights, right?
well, if you're unfamiliar,
It's similar.
Nice. Yeah, I've been to North Carolina, but only driving through it on my way down to Florida back when I was growing up in New York. But from what I recall of North Carolina, it's a pretty beautiful place. And Western North Carolina is the place that I want to see the most, just because, if for no other reason, Brother Mike is there. But yeah, that's man, how much fun would that be if the band all got together in North Carolina to work on some music instead of Alabama? That would be a blast and a half.
I have one condition. We need to make a mystery machine.
dude, you know what's funny? There's like 4 of them in town.
They really are.
Like straight up.
I love it.
Painted just like,
One of them's like a plumbing service too.
yeah. I tell you what, friends, number one, 100% down with this idea. I would love for you all to come to Asheville, because I'm telling you, man, I've been some
Well, fuck, dude. Moog Music is in Asheville, isn't it?
Bob
It
Moog.
is.
I used to drive around behind him in town and didn't know it was Bob until I saw his car on a documentary years later. He always used to drive around town in this Subaru that had all this crazy decoration on the side. And I'd end up behind him driving through downtown being like, God, who's got this crazy, looking vehicle? Turns out I'm watching this documentary later on. It was him. And my buddy, buddy Dan Lewis, who I've played some music with, was in a trio with Bob back in the day. And unfortunately,
Wow.
Bob passed away not too, I think about a decade ago. But
About 10 years ago.
the Moog headquarters, I think it might, unfortunately, the main one here in town might have closed. Austin, do you remember?
I think the factory closed, but they still have the museum, which is,
Yeah.
if you're a fan, it's pretty cool because they've got the full scale of history to walk through with. I'm pretty sure you could go
yeah.
interact with all the different scents and everything too. So,
But
still cool to see.
Nice.
You're talking about like the Moog,
yeah,
like
MOO,
like a Texas
synthesizer.
Instruments Moog.
Bob Moog,
Synthesizer.
he invented
Yeah.
the form
Oh,
synthesis that.
my brother has one of those actually.
Yeah, they
Like
started,
one of the really old ones that my dad bought back in like the 90s at a garage
Yeah.
sale or
Right.
something.
Wow.
Yeah, they started off predominantly as a monophonic, like lead and bass synthesizer kind of thing, and then it gets crazier and crazier with the patching in and all of that sort of stuff. But it's a complete subculture. The people that are really interested in that stuff. But I think it would be incredible to have you guys here in the mountains and just seeing some of the stuff. And if you're going to come up to Asheville, the crown jewel that I say of this whole place is the Grove Park Inn. Just to be able to go up there with you guys, this place, it looks like the Stanley from The Shining, and it's just
Oh, hell yeah.
old and historic.
I actually told myself if I go visit, I want to stay a night at the Grove Park Inn.
Oh, you should, and you should stay in a room at the Palm Court, the room that kicked off our entire podcast, our very first episode, the Pink Lady of the Grove Park Inn. Here we are closing out the year. It only makes sense to go back to the start and talk about why this was our first episode. The Pink Lady is this haunting that's been taking place at the Grove Park Inn. It is one of, if not the most famous hauntings in Western North Carolina, Asheville, definitely. And there have been so many people that have experienced this apparition. It had to be the first one that we ever did, and that one, even on our first episode, the Dr. Captain himself was just pulling up stuff that I had never even known was a thing attributed to the whole situation. But all the paranormal stuff aside, it's a creepy place, but it's a beautiful historical place that looks over the mountains of Western North Carolina. It looks over the cityscape of Asheville. It's got, wonderful food, and it is just a straight up vibe. So it would make me happier than anything to be there with the Dr. Captain and all of the hitchhiker brethren, and just be able to just like take in the ghostly mountains, as your dad refers to them,
Yeah.
Lord Stratton.
Yeah, and on top of that, it was about this time last year, Caleb and I had been kicking around the idea for the podcast, but we were up at the Grove Park Inn. They have the National Gingerbread House competition on display this time of year. So we were just up there, getting all the Christmas vibes in. And at that point, I think that was when we kind of pulled the trigger. It's like, yep, let's do this. Should we do the Pink Lady for our first episode? It just felt right. Everything kind of clicked. And then we went and did sake bombs, and the rest is history.
The sake.
It's fascinating to me just how much that in all of the different lore that happens in your region, that the Grove Park Inn kind of pops up a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah, and not just in Ghost. I mean, we were talking to Alan Greenfield. Not sure if you all are familiar with him, but someone who's kind
Hellier.
of yeah, back in just the old ufology circles too. And he was talking about his parents used to go take him to stay at the Grove Park Inn when he was a teenager, and that's where he conceived the idea to form the I guess it was like the National UFO Conference or whichever one he kind of started back in the day. But I thought it was interesting that idea itself was born in the GPI as well.
Yeah, I have to say, and I'd actually been meaning to mention this earlier, but talking about some of the like really true highlights of doing this podcast for this year, no doubt, hands down, getting to know Dr. Alan Greenfield has been just an incredible experience because he is so damn funny. He is such a wild card, and he is also so intensely knowledgeable, and also somebody that was there for some of the early days of ufology. And I mean, he's hanging out with all these like OG figures from the world. It's just incredible to be able to talk to somebody that experienced that stuff. And Alan is just, he is a wonderful, wonderful person. And you are never going to have a dull moment when you listen to a podcast with him on it. So,
Well, I have to credit Mr. Nyberger for introducing me to this great TV series called Hellier, which took place not too awful far from where you gentlemen are.
Yep.
Yeah.
And imagine my amazement as I'm watching this series, and all of a sudden I see this familiar-looking individual on some of the episodes by the name of Micah Hanks. And I mean, that was
young
that
and
was kind of cool. And
Micah Hanks.
yes, right in the field, as you were saying, Caleb, boots on the ground. And John, was it you that was telling me that I think they were working on another series, another season of Hellier? Is that accurate?
Yep.
Alan Greenfield confirmed that he is going to be a part of season 3. So,
Ooh,
and it is in the works.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I was surprised how taken in I was by that series. That was really well done. I really enjoyed it.
Jim, actually jumping back to the Catskill stuff you were mentioning earlier, have you seen the documentary The Unbinding that they did?
No.
oh, you'll
Ooh, yeah, that one I highly recommend. They find, I don't want to give too much away, but they find a just some sort of relic that someone had been donated to them that was found in the Catskills Mountain, and things get crazy from there. But definitely recommend checking that out. It's the same crew that did Hellier.
yeah.
Roberta the doll.
So I think it's settled. We're going to get a film crew, and the phallic team is going to film a whole season and try to sell it to one of the big TV channels out there. And we're going to start our own investigation program. I think it's settled.
Bring to it.
Johnny's pitching a tent on the phallic team.
All right, Team Phallic out.
It's big enough for 12 people, okay? We got plenty of room for everybody to sleep.
Oh.
And then we start our spin-off show that Travis Taylor has already approved of before Skinwalker Ranch. Team.
So then we're going to call ourselves the Foreskin Walkers?
Yeah, before Skinwalkers. Because we're looking at
the letter B
before
space
Skinwalker Ranch.
For Skinwalkers. Got it.
I think Team Phallic really works, guys.
And we're going to launch rockets.
Yeah.
Lots of rockets.
Look.
The question is, are we going to make money hand over fist?
It depends on how you tap it. Anyway, that said, I just want to say, still talking about the Hellier series, I knew that Micah had been in contact with Greg and Dana Newkirk back in the day, and was part of that series. I can't turn on anything paranormal related without 4 seconds into it. There's my Micah, there's the bro on everything. So I just assume, I'm like, I'll turn on this, he'll be in it. But man, that program really genuinely drew me in. And it's different schools of thought as far as, some people have different investigation methods than other people. Greg and Dana, I love what they do. I think that as far as their production and the vibe that they try to put off, I find it incredibly entertaining. there's definitely things that if I were in situations similar that, maybe I would take a different approach or a different thought process. I'm not saying I would be right or they would be wrong or vice versa. But I think it's really interesting to get a look into the way they do things and the thought processes and some of the more, I don't know, just kind of, they look into the ritual side of things like that. That's not exactly where I go immediately, but I'm not opposed to it at all. When Austin and I did our paranormal investigation down there at the Lake Lure Inn, we pull out the tarot cards just to see if we have some sort of strange interpretation or any sort of synchronicities that we could recognize that are happening. I never look at that sort of stuff and go, this is the scientific method in which we are utilizing to try to prove the existence of ghosts. But it is kind of this thing. It's kind of just like a psychological, just look at different aspects of how people interpret things. Because again, it's just like, I don't have the answers of to like using a spirit box, that is even personally not my go-to. But, we implemented that on our investigation of the Lake Lure Inn because why not? Why not just see if something comes of that? And if not, fine.
Yeah, and I think things like the spirit box or tarot cards are more of a way of like inducing synchronicity to kind of try to give an opportunity for something to arise that'll make you scratch your head. Not something you could take away as scientific evidence, but just something that kind of adds to the list of strange things that might have happened on that investigation. But kind of going back to Hellier specifically, I think what was so captivating for me with that program was that was really kind of a school of thinking or school of thought that bridged ghosts, UFOs, the occult, all together in a way that kind of made sense. Because you've always, in a way, you find things.
It was fluid. It was a fluid transition to all of it. Yeah,
exactly.
And what's cool about another aspect of it is that the show starts out not really being about anything.
Yeah.
And then as it progresses, it kind of becomes this thing where all of those aspects do combine into some, you still don't know what the story is.
Well,
but there's just a lot of weird stuff going on that seems to be related, but you don't know how.
Well,
exactly.
I think the show, it's a lot of different things, but I think it's a really interesting look at how we psychologically interpret synchronicity, because synchronicity is a huge part of the arc of that show. It's the driving force of that show. But when
100%.
when we all collectively think about the weird little tiny, just random sequences of numbers and just strange synchronicities that we experience, I think it's really interesting to look at how they, lined all those things together, and then we were able to kind of interpret it through the lens of, paranormal, spirituality, all of these different things, because maybe there's more to synchronicity than we're even able to really completely understand at this point. But I think what Hellier does very well is cataloging something that we can go back continually and look at and see a pattern. And again, maybe everything that they were experiencing was just a sequence of random events that did happen to have things that, link them together. But then again, it still begs the question that maybe there is something bigger going on with with synchronicity as a whole.
The thing that I enjoyed the most about it is, and I've said this before, I generally have a strong aversion to most paranormal TV series, and I blame shows like Paranormal State and a lot of others that are just 100% sensationalistic bullshit from the get-go. That's nothing more than entertainment. It's designed to make people that already believe in it buy it hook, line, and sinker, but people like me that want to see some kind of actual application of the scientific method, see some kind of quantifiable data come out of it. I mean, so I was very standoffish going into it when John first recommended it to me. And then by the time I got to about the third or the fourth episode of the first season, I was like, okay, this is actually really interesting. And I mean, I found myself being absolutely drawn in and there's no other show out there like it that I've come across yet, and that's, I think, a good thing. So I'm really, really excited to hear about a third season definitely coming, because I would love to see where this investigation goes next. And that's exactly the kind of show that this whole field, I think, needs to see more of. Just like I think The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch has kind of changed the way that the UAP phenomenon has been looked at. I would love to see Hellier kind of become the same kind of a model for a lot of the more paranormal stuff that's out there, because there's an awful lot of noise out there in the paranormal and ghost hunting type fields, and so often it's difficult to get through all of that noise to find something that's really genuine and sincere. And I think Hellier fits that role based off of what I've seen thus far.
Buddy,
But that's just
you
me.
ain't kidding about just there being a lot of noise and bullshit out there. And look, I get it. I understand why there's a lot of companies out here that make a lot of paranormal stuff. There's been a bunch of shows that I've seen on Netflix where for the entertainment value, I'm like, let's go. This is so fun. This is so spooky. I don't believe a damn word of what you're saying, because, and I understand in a lot of these cases, what they're trying to do is, even if these are real experiences, and in some of these shows, they do seem to be interviewing people that are having emotional reactions to this. If they're supposed to be actors, they aren't very good ones, because they seem like they're regular people. And I know that they change a lot of names, they change a lot of locations, because they don't want to dox where these things went down, so they don't have a flood of people coming that way. I get that.
Right.
For somebody that does have a bit of an investigative, inkling or proclivity to want to go look into these things, it's such a pisser, because you hear these incredible stories. You're like, well, where was this? I want to go find more about this. And it's so tough.
It really is. And the whole field, unfortunately, is just fraught with all kinds of charlatans and hoaxers and people that are just trying to, put their name out there and make a little money from it. And I'm never going to begrudge anybody that wants to make money off of something they're passionate, doing. I mean, how awesome would it be if we could all make a living doing what we're most passionate about, right? But
I mean, look at how much money we make doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I mean, I finally had enough to buy a can of Japanese Fanta.
Well, at the end,
but
not that we have to, justify trying to monetize endeavors like podcasts or anything, but truly at the end of the day, when you're putting a lot of time and effort into something, and there's a lot more time and effort that goes into producing a podcast than people might realize. They might think it's just get on a microphone and we talk for an hour every week. How hard can that be? There's the editing, there's the behind the scenes, there's the audio production, there's the promotion, there's the upkeep of the website, there's the publishing of the episodes, there's the artwork for each episode. There is a ton of stuff that goes into this stuff. And the monetization aspect is the necessary evil that allows what we do, and being able to provide it for the most part to people for free. It just kind of has to be what it is. The more that we're able to make through merchandise and stuff like that, the more we're able to put effort into this and make you this show that you can straight up have for free.
Right. Well said. And it's kind of like anybody that's ever been in an indie band situation.
Very much so.
When you're not on a label and you're an indie musician, the name of the game is constant struggle, because you're your own manager, you're your own record producer, you're your own audio engineer. You literally have to do everything. You have to keep up the social media contacts to make sure that your band's material and name is constantly out there, because nobody's going to do it for you, right?
Exactly.
And it's no different with podcasts. And let me just tip my hat to you and Austin for the job that you guys do with Ghosts in the Mountains. I mean, we've talked numerous times, I know John Nyber and I have, about the amazing theme music that you guys have for your podcast. I mean, you know how big of a synthwave fan I am, Caleb, and this little ditty that you wrote for your theme music. I mean, just sitting back going, damn, I could listen to a whole album's worth of this stuff, So it's very clear the amount of research that the Dr. Captain and you both do on your episodes, just listening to them, and it's a very neatly, professionally produced package that you guys put out there with Ghosts in the Mountains. Unlike the cheap-ass no frills podcast known as the Soul of the Unexplained.
No,
Thankfully,
We're
we have
getting better.
thankfully we have Jonny, who is making it so much better. So again, hats
the
off
thing
to Jonny.
is,
Jonny,
and
Johnny's
I'm
been a blessing.
sure I appreciate that. I'm sure that the Dr. Captain and Dino Beaver will 100% agree with me on this. Is that this kind of stuff? It's a topic that we enjoy, and therefore it's a labor of love versus the amount of
Right.
investment of time, money, all that you put in. You might not get back. In most cases with podcasts, you won't get back. It's just a labor of love. It's something you thoroughly enjoy. You're not doing it for the however many views you're going to get or the potential dollar amount that you might get. You just enjoy what you're doing and you're having a blast doing it with your buddies.
100%.
dude,
100%.
there,
Yeah.
that aspect, and also something that I have experienced through doing this podcast is the joy that people express back to us for what we put together I genuinely cannot even put into words how much it means to me. I know Austin feels the same way, but like when I get a message on Instagram from somebody, like we got a message at the end of the year from somebody, and it was just all caps. He said, "Merry Christmas to the best podcast ever. You guys deserve an Oscar." And I mean, it's just like little statements like that. I was like, that is the sweetest thing. Like, seriously, thank you so much. But we get emails all the time, and I feel so bad because I can't reply to everybody. Because, again, Austin and I still work full-time jobs, both he and I, and I want to be able to write back to everybody, but there have been a ton of people writing in, and oh my God, it's like the positivity coming our way is like a tidal wave. And I just want to take this opportunity to say, I say it on every episode, but I can't thank our listeners enough. It's insane to me that we have the audience that we have. A lot of that it really truly goes out to Brother Micah because he helped push his audience our way, and just a massive thank you to everybody that's been listening. And a huge thank you to you guys for always being like huge supporters of what we've been trying to do. And now
I try to throw fun comments on your stuff.
Oh, dude, you always do. I appreciate it. Dude,
I had to create a new Instagram
No
account
ghosts,
to send you that
no
message.
mountains.
yeah.
I'm a
What kind of
religious fan,
episode
so
is
I don't know
this?
how to read or write.
But hey, so now that we've done the Soul of the Ghost, now we got to do the Ghosts of the Unexplained, and we'll have you guys on our podcast, and we can talk about whatever.
Yeah.
And I really, 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 really hope that Brother Roger's feeling up to doing it, because man, I would love to have him on there. And
We
Oh, yeah,
got to
he's
get
so
Roger
great.
back soon.
His
I'm
insights
hopeful.
are so just fantastic.
And Roger is a paranormal magnet, whereas John is paranormal kryptonite. Trust me,
maybe if
Roger has a wealth of experiences that he could share, truly.
you know what's so funny? I didn't know that you and Roger did a podcast together the first time I ever met Roger. And I just saw him and I was like, there's something about this dude. I like this guy. And I saw he had like a Lord of the Rings tattoo. I'm like, I just want to talk to this guy. I was go, yo, is that Elvin on your leg there? He's like, yeah, dude. And I was like, you ever play Lord of the Rings online, the MMO? He's like, dude, let's go. And like immediately we're just off to the races. He tells me he's got a producer credit on frickin' Diablo 3. And I'm like, who are you? And what government agency do you work for? But just
people don't realize that Roger is actually the true celebrity in our group.
He is.
He's just very low key.
He is.
He only has like 12 Oscars and a few Grammy Awards, but like he's a big dude. He's awesome.
He is the man.
I can't wait for him to watch this episode.
That's right. Roger, we sure miss you, buddy, and we can't wait to get you back in the saddle with us. And absolutely, we would love to. We'd be deeply honored to come on your podcast sometime, Caleb and Austin. That would be awesome.
Let's
Once I'm free to talk more about all of my paranormal experiences, because as you guys know, they're all classified, super secret.
Right?
Apparently.
Come on, what the hell?
We got to tell some good ghost stories.
We could do
That's
one
what we gotta
before the declassification or the unclassified. I don't know what that would be, but we could do it before and we could do one after. But we could plan for something early in the year, 2026 together. I think it'd be very fun.
Hell,
I'll have to
hell
get
yeah.
down there.
100%. Yeah, that would be great. So let's kind of just quickly change gears here for the next 5 minutes or so, and before we wrap things up tonight. But let's talk about the UAP phenomenon. And again, the most one of the more recent episodes that you guys did for Ghosts in the Mountains was for the Rendlesham case over in the UK, which of course is often referred to as the UK's Roswell event. But you guys did a fantastic job on it, and I wanted to ask: have either of you had the chance to see the Age of Disclosure documentary yet?
Oh, I have, yeah.
I have
Yeah.
still not made it around to it. I've been in the thick of Christmas movies for the season. So now that we're past that, I'm going to get back to that. It's probably top of my watch list.
Fantastic. Well, I can say that I already knew that it was going to be good just based off of who I knew was going to be appearing in it. But when I finally watched it, I was still completely it broke me, is the way that I've explained it to people, is that I was not expecting to be moved and shocked as much as I was when I finally got around to watching it. And I think in the short term, and John, you talked about this the last time we were on, but I think in the short term, the documentary has accomplished its goal, which is to start conversations among people who maybe don't generally pay attention to this topic, and try to mainstream it, destigmatize, the topic a little bit. And I think it really did that well. And there's 2 new documentaries that came out recently that I've purchased, but I haven't watched yet. One of them is the updated version of James Fox's Moment of Contact, where he's got new interviews with people down in Varginha, Brazil, one of whom was actually had in-person contact when one of the beings that they brought in was in the hospital. So that's on my next viewing cycle. And also, Dave Politis of Missing 411 just released what I'm told is an excellent documentary on Sasquatch and Bigfoot. So I've got those 2 to watch. But Caleb, just real quickly, what are some of your takeaways from having watched Age of Disclosure?
Well, let me just say overall, it was so great to see, our good buddies Jay Stratton and Dr. Travis Taylor out there on the, out there, helping push this topic forward. It goes without saying, it's incredibly telling when you have this many people that have not corroborated their stories outside and together and in collusion or whatever you want to call it. And they're all essentially being like this. It's not just this, we're past the, is this real? We're completely past that point. Now it's the, let's really try to figure out what this is. Because again, a lot of people, and look, I understand when people talk about this and they come at it from a national security angle, because at the end of the day, with the rules that with the rules that the establishment has set up, that when something that we don't know comes into our airspace, our airspace, then we, I think by default, look at it as a threat. My opinion differs vastly from that. A lot of people talk about this whole thing of, if they were gonna wipe us all out, they would have done it already. And I think there's some validity to that. Now, the director of the film, Dan Farah, I've seen a couple of podcasts that he's gone on. I'm a massive fan of the Smashing Pumpkins.
Same.
And so he pops on Billy Corgan's The Magnificent Others. And so I'm like, of course I'm going to watch this shit. I already saw him on some other podcasts, but yeah, I'm going to watch this. And, he makes this analogy where he talks about essentially, he's like, well, when you think about it in this context, it might hit a little different. When the ants are outside your house and they're just out there in their anthill and they're doing their thing, they aren't posing a problem, then you don't really think about the ants too much. But then the ants get into your house and they are encroaching upon your territory. And unfortunately, at a point, whether you think about it or not, or care what the ants care about or think about, you have to call the exterminator and do something about the ants. And so they kind of look at this thing as, humans and our technological or military capabilities and that stuff growing, there might come a point where we become the ants that become a problem for the aliens. And I'm not going to say, well, the aliens are whatever it is. I'm not going to say that that isn't a possibility. I think it's a double-edged sword with all this stuff. There's lots of different possibilities. There's lots of different possibilities as to what this phenomenon is that we're even dealing with. Hey, who knows what this is? There are seemingly signs that this is technological. There's seemingly signs that this is intelligent. There's a lot of evidence that would point to that being the case, but we just don't know. Now, me being a consummate optimist and part-time Dino Beaver, I'm going to look at this stuff and think of it in the way of, I want to try to come at this from a positive thing. I would like to personally think that whatever this intelligence is, it is not something that is looking at us as a pest, but something that is looking at us as, oh, look, that tomato plant's growing, and maybe I could put a couple little spokes in there to help that tomato plant kind of make its way up the little spokes and grow and become something. Give it a chance.
Yeah, but then what happens next? They eat the tomato.
They're gonna eat us, bro.
Are you saying we're alien food? That could be.
I
that could be
mean,
real here.
in South Park, Kenny was a tomato, and they pulled the plug on him.
That's true. I think, his heart was a tomato or a potato or something. Well, that was...
No, his heart was a potato, but that's a different episode. That was the Terry Schiavo episode that they did.
But basically what I'm saying is, aside from them eating us, maybe they will. But I would like to think at the end...
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh, I love that film. So good. So campy, but so wonderful because it is campy. But at the
My parents showed me that film when I was a small child, and it terrified me.
Oh, yeah.
Ever living hell out of me, honestly.
Hey, real quick thing. The trolls in Ernest Scared Stupid are the clowns from Killer Clowns, but they were repainted and repurposed, so that's why they look similar. That said,
That's funny.
I do have an optimistic outlook towards this, and I think that pessimism has never gotten me anywhere. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think, but I am hopeful that we could become we could become part of a bigger galactic civilization. Nothing would excite me more. And we'll see how it goes, but I personally do not feel threatened by the phenomenon that we classify as UAP or extraterrestrial or aliens. That's my take. Dr. Burgess, if you want to go, rock it. I'm sorry, Dr. Captain Burgess.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, Jim, I think my opinion on the UFO UAP topic was kind of similar to yours at first for a while, that if they are coming from another galaxy, from another planet, you know, there's a lot of things that would kind of get in the way of the actuality of that happening. But I think when you start looking into a lot of the school of thoughts, like when you start hearing these hypotheses about people viewing this as something that maybe interdimensional, maybe something that's been here all along and it didn't have to come here from anywhere, that's when it starts to kind of like open all these other schools of thought and almost parallels the discussion we had on what ghosts are, on where could these be coming from. There are different types of ghosts, different types of spirits that people report and experience. I think the same can be applied to the UFO topic, overlaying that. And kind of going back to what I was talking about before with our conversation with Dr. Greenfield and Micah the other day, is I overheard them say something along the lines of like, well, maybe it's something we're not meant to understand. Maybe it's something we're not capable of ever understanding. And that's kind of been replaying in my head a lot because, you know, for a while, that's kind of a dead end, unfortunately, for a lot of people. But at the same time, it kind of keeps the excitement of the mystery there. If it's something we're never able to understand, it doesn't mean that it's completely a dead end. It's just something that adds to the mystery of the topic, I guess.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's not, and again, there's a lot of people that are out there that want so desperately to believe in the extraordinary that they accept things at face value without doing a lot of critical thinking or analysis before arriving at their conclusion. And I totally understand why people do that. But for me, you know, as I said earlier, I was very familiar with Fermi's paradox, you know, and all these other well-published theories by very famous academics that have said, you know, the likelihood of an advanced civilization traveling from even the nearest star to us just to get across that great vast distance would not be likely. You know, where is everybody? Oh, well, you know, But for me, it's also, at the same time, why are we applying our own current limitations on technology and our own current limitations that we have on the understanding of physics to say that there couldn't be a way for people that live in extreme distances out in the cosmos to get here without having to spend several lifetimes to do so, or without using internal combustion engines like you would have on a rocket, right? So, so that's where the whole concept, is it something that we would call a wormhole, or is there some other means, that we've seen a lot of the possible theories of stuff like that play out on Skinwalker Ranch recently. But for me, I also think there's a very good likelihood that at least some of what we're dealing with here with these UAPs is perhaps a civilization that has always been here on Earth, right alongside human beings, that for whatever reason they've been able to remain hidden and undiscovered, as it were. But there's all these stories that you just can't really discount that go back to biblical times and pre-biblical times, and the really ancient religions like the Hindus. Their accounts of seeing strange things in the sky seem to pair up pretty well with the stuff that we're seeing in 2025. So, and then you get to the whole bit of, well, okay, it's all just secret technology. Well, okay, then explain how stuff was going faster, exponentially faster than the speed of sound in 1947, when people back in the 30s and 40s and 50s were seeing these things executing the same kind of ridiculous maneuvers as far as these nuts and bolts craft. So I think that for starters, there's not a one size fits all answer to any of this. I think that some of it very well could be extraterrestrial, but I'm not convinced that's necessarily the most likely explanation for some of it. I think it might fit some of them, but it could also easily be an interdimensional phenomena that we don't understand because we don't quite understand the nature of interdimensional physics, as it were. I also think that, again, it could be what they call the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, which is, a civilization that may be native to planet Earth, but for whatever reason, because of their advanced intelligence and advanced technology, they're able to remain sequestered away, as it were. But regardless, as you said earlier, Caleb, I think we're beyond the discussion of, is this real? Because I think categorically the answer is a resounding yes. This phenomena is real, but it's what we do now that we have that knowledge and can accept, okay, this is real. We have all these very credible witnesses coming forward, including some now that were or have very recently been directly involved with some of these famous cases, and just these alleged legacy programs themselves, that they've had direct involvement in some of it. So I think for me, Age of Disclosure, it was not even a home run; it was a grand slam as far as that goes. I love the way that Dan Farah put it together. I think that he could not have chosen a better group of people to put into the spotlight so that people can take the testimony seriously. And where it goes from here is anybody's guess, but I was really pleasantly surprised with how good, how impactful the Age of Disclosure documentary was. And that extends beyond my personal connection to Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor. But it tracks, though, because I know the character of both Jay and Travis, and I know that these are men of great integrity, great honesty. They're not the kind of guys that would literally risk everything in their career and their lives just to make a quick buck and trick people into thinking that there's something there that really isn't. So I think to that end, I was really impressed by Age of Disclosure. And long term, I hope that they're able to keep this momentum going. Where it goes from here, I don't know really what good additional congressional hearings are going to do unless there is some kind of evidence that's brought that people can look at that's incontrovertible. And in the age that we currently live with AI, is anything ever really going to be incontrovertible unless people can actually get out there and physically touch it with their own hands or view it with their own eyes as it's sitting there in front of them? And to that is, that's anybody's guess. But I'm encouraged. I'm more hopeful now that this may actually go somewhere as far as disclosure goes. And I think we've got a really good head start on it, thanks to the people that came forward with Age of Disclosure. And, who knows? I think just based off of all the stuff that we've talked about tonight and the stuff that you guys talk about on Ghosts in the Mountains, our world and our universe is a lot stranger than a lot of us realize, but also far more interesting, and none of it scares me. And I don't know if it was you, Caleb, or you, Austin, that brought up the fear component, but I don't think that any of this is something to be feared, because it's all still part of the natural world around us, and it's naturally occurring things. So why should we be afraid of something that is just as much a real part of the universe as we are? And that's how I'll end that my little soapbox on that. But to go around the room here, just kind of closing thoughts and remarks from everybody on everything we've discussed so far. And John Stratton, we'll start with you.
Oh man, you always got to throw me under the bus with having to think fast. No, but going to what you were just saying a minute ago about, these historical things that occurred, and then later we're finding things that make it line up. I don't remember if it was one of his public talks that he had, like at Phenomicon or something, but, discussion with William Henry from Ancient Aliens. He was talking about an incident around India, Pakistan, in that region, where they believe the War of the Gods had occurred. And one of the fascinating findings that they had is actually finding trinitite, which, for people that don't really know what trinitite is, it's a substance that, as far as our current understanding is, can only be formed from atomic or nuclear blasts, creating this glass-like substance that's like, it's radioactive, but not like dangerously so most of the cases. And it's like a green glassy substance. And finding that stuff out there, where to our knowledge, considering the first atomic blasts really didn't occur till 1944, I think was our first test blast that we ever did. There's never been a blast in that region. So the fact that they found this substance out there is kind of fascinating. To, all things in all, it's been a great year. I've been really enjoying Ghosts in the Mountains. It's one of my favorite podcasts, even though sometimes, like we just had, there's no ghosts and there's no mountains.
Well, that's the thing. Me and
it's great.
Ghosts in the Mountains, and posthumously, that's gonna play out way better than it does now.
There's gonna be ghosts everywhere. There's gonna be aliens everywhere. We got Aliens in the Mountains coming soon, I'm sure. But no, it's been fantastic. I appreciate you guys joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, man.
Sure thing. John,
to
Mr.
be able to
Nyberg,
now put a voice or a face to the voice is like the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Catherine and I don't spend a lot of time, other than like podcasts like this, ever showing our faces, because we just don't like social media. And I think it's been kind of fun to have that air of mystique about it. So anyway,
It's almost like wearing a mask.
yeah, nobody
Right,
cared
right.
who I was till I put on the mask. The Bucky's onesie.
John, closing thoughts and remarks from
John.
you.
No, I echo what Johnny just said. It's great to finally see a face for Austin, and it was great to have you guys on here. It's always fun to have Caleb on here. You never know, but yeah, it was really cool to meet you guys, and thanks for coming on.
Right on. Dr. Captain, closing thoughts and remarks from you, sir. Well, Captain, my captain.
Oh gosh, well, again, I'll start off by saying thank you for having us. It was great to officially meet you all. I've heard so many good stories, so glad to officially join the crew. But again, just recapping the year, this whole podcast has been a journey for Caleb and I, because it's not just something for entertainment. Like we're diving into things that we are genuinely interested in, and I think it's opened a lot of doors and opened a lot of new ways of thinking about the strange world that we live in for us, and kind of maybe changing the way we think, maybe just reaffirming some of our older beliefs. But if nothing else, it's just kind of given me an outlet for what has kind of been my personal hobby for a long time. Cause I'm reading these books already. I'm doing the research on my own, just out of pure curiosity. So being able to go and sit down once a week with Caleb to chat for a couple hours about what I've been reading, discovering every week, it's just been awesome to have an outlet that people genuinely seem to enjoy, which kind of, for lack of a better term, has been my hobby for years before this.
Right on. Well, we're all the richer for it. There's no question for that. So thank you for everything you do. And Mr. Dino Beaver, closing thoughts and remarks from you, you sexy mother.
Well, number one, let me just say, it brings me so much joy to be in a digital room with these gentlemen right here, because every single time I get to talk to you guys, it is genuinely it's like they say at the end of The Grinch, his heart grew 3 sizes that day. And hopefully after all this Christmas food, my ass won't grow 3 sizes. But that said,
well, the phallic team has just grown 3 sizes.
Hey.
so we're up to a full inch.
Gotta love the paranormal sildenafil.
But dude, seriously, it's been so wonderful, like being part of all of your lives and getting to know you guys. I mean, I've like gotten so many wonderful friends out of this, and I don't mean like acquaintances. I mean like true friends out of you guys. When I was probably 18 years old, 18 or 19 years old, this skinny little punk rocker walks up to me and he's like, dude, number one, we're playing shows together and blah, blah, blah. And this is Dr. Captain, is a very young kid, and he's playing in this band, opening up for the band that I was in. And not long after that, he's like, dude, I'm like looking into paranormal stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's interesting. And this kid, back when he was super young, is out there doing paranormal investigations on his own of the things that are around the town that he grew up in, which is not far from Asheville. And he's bringing evidence to the table. He's like, brother, I got like this really interesting orb photograph. And, as Austin kind of hilariously tells on this episode that we did about the orb phenomenon, he's like, when I showed this to Caleb, he was probably like, yeah, sure, whatever, pal. But what was great about this was I was skeptical of the orb phenomenon back in the day. And I'm not saying that I'm not skeptical at all of it now, but after we did that episode and I saw a lot of the information that Austin brought to the table about the orb phenomenon, I got to say, I really genuinely do look at it in a different perspective. And I think that is such a cool, healthy way that we can like grow and learn from each other. And dude, here I was this guy that was like a little bit more in it than he was back in the day, as far as, being part of a pretty predominant paranormal investigation team. Here this dude is it's come full circle. He's teaching me stuff now, and I love that very much. And my friendship with Austin, we've fallen out of touch a few times over the years, but coming back together and collaborating with him on stuff and talking with him on this, dude. This podcast is the best band we ever started, and I've
right.
I've enjoyed it so very much, and the community that we are actively growing with Ghosts in the Mountains, we were able to not raise a ton of money, but we were able to raise some money for the people that were affected by Hurricane Helene, which a year ago ravaged Western North Carolina. We were all affected by it massively. And one of the communities, Swannanoa, North Carolina, which unfortunately in the media was one of the more unsung communities, we donated every single dime to them because they had almost no coverage. And that community is still to this day rebuilding.
Yeah, they're an unincorporated community, so they weren't getting a lot of the just assistance that you would as an official town, city, any sort of governmental help on that side. It was a lot of just nonprofits having to come together and take care of each other. And just that story is what kind of hit the hardest for both Caleb and I. And you look at some of these places that have received some FEMA assistance, and Swannanoa is still very far from that. So
yeah, so
that was
all that said, huge, massive thank you to people like L.W. Marshall of Paranormal Palaver podcast. That's the Triple P. He was a big contributor to people that were affected by Hurricane Helene, and everybody that bought a t-shirt from ghostinthemountains.com that was one of our Hurricane Helene relief t-shirts, 100% of the proceeds of that went to go actually help people that were affected by that. And even, our voice is pretty small right now, but it did help. It helped somebody, and thank you so much. That to me was probably the biggest part of this entire first year because we started months after this crazy thing took place. And yeah, I mean, couldn't be happier. Looking forward into the future of what we're doing. And knowing that we got buds like you, that we can do these like dual podcasts sometimes, dude, cannot wait. Team Phallic 2026, baby.
Do I dare
I
ask if
cannot
there's
wait.
any coming attractions for the Phallic team?
Well, they'll be in your face.
We've just been delisted by YouTube. Unsubscribe. Yeah.
Well,
It's going to be
Yes,
bigger.
indeed.
It's going to be better. It's going to be a hard journey, but we're going to get there.
We're going to be bigger, better, and veinier in 2020.
and we will finish strong.
It writes
Oh
itself.
boy, we have
Mom, I'm
derailed.
sorry. I know you're going to listen to this.
We took a very hopeful thing and just ruined it. But I think Team Phallic's MO.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
Johnny makes a good point. None of our parents are going to be listening to this. His mom is going to listen to this. She's going to hear this.
Hi, Doc.
She is going to be on the treadmill listening to this and texting me, "What in the world are you doing?"
And we will ask her,
Because she's done it before.
where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
It was all
I
that
like to-
Kelgard kid that started it.
Nobody knows.
Yep. But dudes, thank you so much. This has been a blast, and I very much look forward to everything that we do moving forward.
Amen, brother.
Like I said,
and
it's going to
folks,
be bigger. It's going to be better.
yes, indeed. And folks, if you'd like to find out more about Ghosts in the Mountains, I'm going to put the link in the video description below to the YouTube channel where you can listen to their podcast, as well as the website where you can go to learn more about what Austin and Caleb are working on for the podcast. And I strongly invite all of our subscribers and viewers to subscribe to the Ghosts in the Mountains YouTube channel and anywhere else where you can support the amazing work that both Dr. Captain Burgess and the Dino Beaver himself are doing on their amazing podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to have you join us once again, Caleb and Austin. So nice to finally get to meet you and put a face to the legend of the name. And we can't wait to have you guys back on sometime. It's just been so much fun. And folks, just a reminder that if you like what you saw and heard this evening, despite the adult humor and some of the language, then please hit that like button for us and let us know what some of your thoughts are, perhaps on these strange phenomena such as ghosts and hauntings. And if you've ever watched the Hellier series, let us know what you think about it and anything of that sort. But whatever you do, please do what you can to support our good friends Caleb and Austin in their amazing endeavor that they are currently engaged in via their podcast. Folks, that's all we have for today, and we will see you next time right here on the Sol of the Unexplained. And a very happy new year to all of you. I raise my glass and salute each of you, to you, Jonny, and to you, John, and Caleb, and Dr. Captain Burgess, to you as well. I offer the my greatest wishes for an awesome 2026, success, health, happiness, and joy, and hopefully as many tacos as we can all get our hands on in 2026 as well. And with that, folks, we will see you next time right here on the Sol of the Unexplained. See ya.